Imagine waking up in a quiet town where everyone knows your name, but you've never met them before. A woman arrives, beautiful, confident, carrying a red book that seems to whisper secrets. She knows things she shouldn't. Dreams you never told her. Lies buried for years. And when the town tries to silence her, the truth fights back. Who or what is Adiz? Why does her red book write itself? And why is Neoma the only one brave enough to face the storm of secrets tearing Umuaka apart? This story will leave you questioning, what if your darkest truth was written in that book? Don't move. Don't blink. Because this tale of mystery, betrayal, and supernatural truth starts now. And trust me, you'll want to see how it ends. Drop a heart in the comments if you're hooked. Where are you watching from? New York? Lagos? Accra? Cape Town? Let me know below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe because this is just the beginning. It all began on a bright Monday morning in the quiet town of Umuaka. The town was alive with its usual sounds, children laughing as they ran to school, mothers frying akara by the roadside, chatting and flipping the hot snacks in oil, and Okada riders honking non-stop like that would fix the morning traffic. Then, something strange happened. A woman appeared at the main junction. No one had seen her before. She had light skin that glowed in the sun, wide hips, a full chest, and a face as soft as morning dew. She wore a short red dress and high heels that clicked as she walked. Under her arm, she held a big red book. Everyone stopped what they were doing. Who is she? People whispered. The woman smiled as she walked, waving at strangers like they were old friends. Good morning, Maman Kechi, she said cheerfully. Maman Kechi blinked in surprise. She didn't know this girl, yet the girl knew her name. She nodded at Baba the fruit seller and even smiled at the grumpy woman who always chased children away from her stall. Some people liked her. Others didn't trust her. But everyone agreed on one thing. This woman, her name was Adiz, knew way too much for someone who had just arrived. That evening, the whole town buzzed with gossip. Who is she? Where's she from? How does she know our names? Adiz didn't seem bothered. She sat by the main kiosk, writing in her red book. People whispered about her, but she just hummed softly and kept writing. The next day, she came back, wearing a bright green jumpsuit with a red scarf tied around her head. She still carried the red book. Her hips moved confidently, and everyone stared. Even old Papa Chukwu forgot to collect change from a customer. Neoma, the queen of gossip in Umuaka, watched from her usual seat under the Udala tree. She wore her usual outfit, leggings, a face cap, and big sunglasses even though the sun wasn't out. She watched Adiz closely and muttered to herself, "Let's see who thinks they can take my crown." Adiz walked up to her with a warm smile. "Good morning, Auntie Neoma. I love your slippers." Neoma was shocked. Nobody ever noticed her slippers, let alone said something nice about them. From that moment, something strange happened. They became friends. They started spending afternoons under the tree, sipping zobo and talking about people in Umuaka. At first, Neoma enjoyed it. But soon, she started to worry. Adiz knew too much. One day, she even mentioned a dream Neoma had 2 nights ago about her late mother's stew recipe. Neoma hadn't told anyone. How did Adiz know? Later that week, a loud argument broke out in the market. Mema Ada stood in the middle of the crowd, shouting, "God punish whoever stole my red bra. It was new, brought from Abuja." People laughed and gathered to watch. Adiz, sitting nearby with Neoma, quietly said, "It wasn't stolen. Your neighbor's dog dragged it behind the carpenter's shop." Everyone went silent. Mama Ada looked at her. "How do you know that?" Adiz just smiled. "Just a guess." When they checked, the bra was right there, just like she said. The crowd cheered. This girl isn't just beautiful, she's useful. But Neoma didn't cheer. She watched Adiz closely. That was no guess, she thought. Adiz is hiding something. The next day, they sat at the motor park, eating puff-puff while Okada riders argued with passengers. Adiz, wearing a short blue gown and big sunglasses, leaned closer. "Did you hear about Mr. Obi's wife? She cried all night after catching him texting that dry cleaner woman." Neoma choked on her puff-puff. How do you know that? Adiz giggled. I just hear things. Neoma laughed, but her mind was racing. That wasn't common knowledge, she'd only heard it that morning while walking past Mr. Obi's house. That night, Neoma made a decision. Tomorrow, I'll follow her. I'll find out who she really is. Before sunrise, dressed in black like a detective, she borrowed her cousin's motorcycle and parked near the old building where Adiz usually disappeared. At 8 a.m., Adiz stepped out in a tight orange top and jeans, her red book in hand. Instead of taking the main road, she turned onto a small bush path near the church. Neoma followed carefully, pretending to pick leaves whenever someone passed. Adiz kept walking until she reached an old, broken-down primary school. The building was covered in weeds. She looked around, smiled and walked straight through a solid wall. Neoma's mouth fell open. Her hands shook. What in Nollywood did I just see? She whispered. She jumped on the motorcycle and sped back home, wrapper flying in the wind. That night, she locked her doors, put her Bible under her pillow, and tied 3 scarves around her head. No spirit will catch me tonight, she whispered. But at 10 p.m., she heard a knock. 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 She peeked out and saw Adiz, smiling like it was daytime. I brought fried fish, she said. You like it spicy, right? The smell was amazing. Neoma didn't want to open the door, but her stomach won. Adiz walked in like nothing was wrong. She sat, crossed her legs, and began talking again about the pastor's housegirl who was stealing palm oil, the teacher who farted in class and blamed the kids, and the town chairman who cried when his girlfriend left him for a plumber. Neoma laughed nervously, but deep inside, she was scared. Is she reading my mind? She wondered. Or is it that red book? After Adiz left, Neoma called her uncle, Barber Hugo, the town's herbalist. She told him everything. The next morning, Neoma woke up with a stiff neck. She hadn't slept much, too many strange dreams. In one of them, Adiz stood in the middle of the market, her red book floating in the air, pages flipping on their own. In another, Neoma tried to speak, but no words came out, only feathers. By 9 a.m., she was at Barber Hugo's shrine. His compound sat at the edge of Umuaka, hidden behind thick bushes and old palm trees. The smell of burnt herbs and dried fish hung in the air. A goat bleated somewhere nearby. Uncle, Neoma whispered as she stepped into the hut. It's serious. Barber Hugo looked up from a pile of cowrie shells. If it's about money, come back next week. Spirits don't work on market days. No, she said quickly. It's a woman. She appeared out of nowhere and she knows things. That got his attention. He sat up straighter. Describe her. Fair-skinned. Pretty. Always smiling. Carries a red book. Knows people's secrets, things no one tells anyone. Barber Hugo frowned. Has she touched you? No. Has she given you food? Neoma hesitated. Only fried fish, and maybe Zobo. He slapped his knee. You drank Zobo from a stranger who walks through walls? You think this is Nollywood? Neoma folded her arms. I was hungry. Barber Hugo stood and walked to a corner of the hut. He came back with a small calabash filled with black powder and placed it beside a cracked mirror. Look inside, he said. She leaned over the mirror. At first, she only saw her reflection, then smoke began to rise. Slowly, an image appeared, Adiz, sitting in her usual spot under the udala tree, but her eyes were glowing. Her red book was open on her lap, and the pages moved on their own, like they were alive. Neoma gasped and stepped back. What is that? Barber Hugo sighed. She's not from here. That book, it's not just a book. It's alive. Alive. Neoma's voice cracked. It holds stories. Secrets. Things that were buried, forgotten, or never supposed to come out. But now it's here, and so is she. Neoma paced the hut. But why Umuaka? We're not that interesting. Barber Hugo's eyes narrowed. Sometimes the spirits choose small towns because small towns hide the biggest lies. That night, Umuaka was silent. Even the dogs didn't bark. At 2 a.m., Adiz stood by the shrine. The moonlight bathed her red dress. She touched the ground gently and whispered something in a language no one spoke anymore. The earth shivered. The next morning, people woke up to confusion. Baba Kalu, who had been mute for 5 years, suddenly started singing Fuji songs in the market. Mama F's hens laid blue eggs. And a message appeared on the community billboard, written in perfect cursive. The truth doesn't die. It waits. People gathered to read it. Nobody knew who wrote it. Except Neoma. She stood at the edge of the crowd, eyes on the message, heart racing. She looked across the street and there was Adiz, smiling, her red book tucked under her arm. Later that evening, Neoma knocked on Adiz's door. She didn't expect to be let in, but the door opened like it had been waiting for her. Inside, the room was warm, filled with candles. The walls were covered with old photos of people from Umuaka, some young, some old, some already dead. Adiz sat at a small table, her red book open. I was wondering when you'd come, she said. Neoma sat down. What is this place? A memory house, Adiz said softly. Every town has one. Most just forget. And the book? Adiz smiled. It listens. It remembers. It writes what people try to hide. Neoma's eyes went wide. You mean, you don't write in it? Adiz shook her head. It writes itself. A chill ran through Neoma's spine. Adiz leaned closer. There's a reason I came to Umuaka. And you are part of it. Neoma stood up. No. I didn't sign up for this. I was just gossiping and sipping Zobo. Adiz chuckled. You don't get to choose the story. The story chooses you. Outside, the wind howled, and the trees whispered like they knew something was coming. Something big. By the end of the week, Umuaka was buzzing like a broken radio. The stories were everywhere: how Adiz knew who had buried charms behind the Anglican church, how she whispered the real name of a boy who went missing 15 years ago, how she made Papa Udochukwu confess he had 2 families, one in Umuaka, one in Owari. Nobody said her name out loud anymore. They just called her that woman. She's a witch, said Mama F, clutching her Bible like a handbag. No, said Baba Yugo, she's worse. She doesn't use power. She uses truth. And that made people even more afraid. Neoma tried to stay away, but it was no use. Every morning, she found herself walking past Adiz's house, just to see if the red book was open. Most times, it was. Sometimes, it flipped its own pages slowly, like it was thinking. The fear in town grew fast. Children were warned not to go near the Udala tree. The priest announced a prayer vigil. The elders met in secret. People whispered in the market, at the borehole, behind locked doors. Everyone had something to hide, and everyone was terrified they'd be next. Then, one afternoon, it happened. A note appeared on the school chalkboard. Not written in chalk. It was burned into the wood. A man who hides truth under his roof will watch his house burn. People screamed. Teachers fainted. The school was closed that day. That night, the town held a meeting at the town hall. The whole place was packed. Even people who usually avoided drama showed up, just to be sure their names weren't mentioned. She must leave, said one elder. This town is not for spirits. She's just a woman, someone else muttered. No, Baba Yugo said quietly from the back. She's not. Everyone turned to look at him. She carries a book that listens. That remembers. That tells. And it's not finished yet. The room went quiet. Then someone shouted, she's turning our lives into a story. Another added, and not a good one. A plan formed. Quick. Cruel. Cowardly. They would confront her the next morning. Politely, of course. Ask her to leave. If she refused, they'd force her. The book too. Neoma didn't sleep that night. She kept thinking of Adiz's voice. You don't get to choose the story. The story chooses you. Morning came fast. A crowd gathered in front of Adiz's house. Some held signs. Others held stones. A few had Bibles. The sun hadn't even fully risen. The door opened before anyone knocked. Adiz stood there calmly, red book in hand. She didn't look scared. She didn't even look surprised. "You want me gone?" she asked. Nobody spoke. The book opened itself. A single page turned, like a finger pointing. Then Adiz read. She read out a name. And a secret. Loudly. Clearly. The crowd froze. People turned to stare at the man whose name she said. His hands shook. His wife gasped. His children looked confused. Someone in the back said, "Let her speak." Another whispered, "What if we've been wrong?" But it was too late. The man broke down crying. Right there, in front of everyone. Adiz closed the book. "I don't come to destroy," she said. "I come to reveal." Then she stepped back into her house and shut the door. The crowd slowly disappeared. Some people cried. Some prayed. Some just walked away, pretending nothing happened. Neoma stayed behind, staring at the closed door. Later that evening, she knocked again. Adiz opened it. "Still want to run?" Adiz asked with a smile. Neoma shook her head. "I want to understand." The book opened again. This time, a blank page stared back at them. Waiting. Neoma sat across from Adiz, the red book resting between them like a third presence. It hadn't moved in minutes, but it didn't feel still. It felt like it was waiting. "Why me?" Neoma asked finally. Adiz didn't answer right away. She took a sip of warm zobo, then set the cup down carefully, as if measuring time with each movement. "You're not the first to ask that," she said. "And you won't be the last." Neoma frowned. "What do you mean?" Adiz ran a hand across the book's spine. "Umuaka has seen me before." Neoma blinked. "You?" "Not in this skin," Adiz said quietly. "But yes, me." The book opened by itself. 5 pages turned. Then it stopped on one. Yellowed, cracked, older than the rest. A name was written in the corner, a Furum. "She was the first," Adiz said. "Over 100 years ago. The town burned her hut because she told the truth about a chief's missing son." Neoma leaned closer. There was a sketch on the page. A woman with thick braids, holding a bundle of palm leaves. Her eyes were sharp, even in ink. "They said she cursed the land," Adiz continued. "But it wasn't her. It was what they did to her." The next page flipped. Another name. Umuaka. She came 50 years later. Different body. Same gift. Same ending. "Did they kill her?" Neoma asked, voice low. Adiz nodded. And then the rain stopped for 3 years. Page after page turned. More names. More women. Always the same pattern. Arrival. Revelation. Rejection. Burnings. Banishments. Burials. Neoma felt sick. So this town, it keeps doing the same thing. Adiz smiled, sad and knowing. And the story keeps returning to tell it right. Neoma stood and paced the room. "So why are you telling me all this? I'm not special." "Exactly," Adiz said. "That's why the story can trust you." Neoma looked at her, confused. "You don't want to be powerful," Adiz said. "You want to understand. That's rarer than you think." Outside, the wind picked up. Dry leaves scraped the window like claws. The air felt heavier than usual, thick with something unsaid. "Others will come," Adiz said quietly. "They always do. Some to silence. Some to watch. Some to beg. But they all come." "What happens next?" Neoma asked. Adiz closed the book. "That depends on the town. And on you." That night, as Neoma walked home, she passed 3 men standing under a mango tree. One of them held a bottle of petrol. Another had a machete. The third carried nothing, but his eyes followed her the whole way. She didn't run. She walked steady, as if the book were still with her. Because in a way, it was. Neoma didn't sleep that night. She lay awake listening to the wind rattle her shutters and the sound of distant footsteps, too many for one person, not enough for a mob. They came and went like whispers, never pausing, never knocking. By morning, she had made a decision. She walked to her mother's compound with the sun still soft in the sky. The dew hadn't lifted. Her slippers wet the red earth as she passed the old breadfruit tree where children used to play. Now the tree was quiet, too. Mama Ngozi was in the backyard, feeding the chickens. She looked up as Neoma approached. "I heard you were with that woman again," her mother said before any greetings. Neoma swallowed. "I needed to talk to her." Mama Ngozi wiped her hands on her wrapper. "Talk, or be seen talking? You think the town doesn't watch you? They've always watched me. I'm just the first to notice." Her mother narrowed her eyes. "You want to end up like your father?" Neoma flinched. "You think this is the first time your bloodline has been close to her kind?" Mama Ngozi asked. "That red book has passed through this family more than once." "What do you mean?" But her mother had already turned back to the chickens. Neoma followed her. "You always said Papa died from a fever." "And he did," her mother snapped. "A fever of truth. One day he told a secret meant to stay buried, and by morning he was shaking in his bed like a goat under harmattan." Neoma felt her throat tighten. "What secret?" Mama Ngozi looked at her daughter, really looked this time. Then she whispered, "Ask the book." Later that evening, Neoma returned to Adi's house. The red book was already open on the table. It had written a new name in deep ink. Chibueze Okoro. Her father. She sat down. The page began to shift, the ink spreading slowly like it was remembering. He found the truth under the mango tree. Buried in a calabash, sealed with a feather and palm oil. He broke the seal. He said it out loud. And the wind carried it. The boy wasn't the chief's son. Neoma stared. Her fingers trembled. Adiz entered quietly, carrying a lantern. "Your father's truth shook this town," she said. "It still echoes. But why write it now?" "Because you asked." The book closed with a soft thud. Neoma wiped her face, only now realizing she'd been crying. Adiz handed her a cloth. "There's more. The book hasn't finished." "I don't think I want to know the rest," Neoma whispered. Adiz looked at her gently. "Then you're not ready to carry it." They sat in silence. The air around them wasn't heavy this time. It was still. As if the whole town was holding its breath. Outside, a crow landed on the windowsill and cawed once. Inside, the red book glowed faintly under the lantern light. The next morning, Umuaka woke strange. Children walked quieter. Market women forgot their songs. Even the dogs barked with restraint, as though the whole town was trying not to disturb something sleeping beneath its skin. Neoma felt the shift the moment she stepped outside. It wasn't just eyes on her. It was silence with intention. She passed by Mama Chinye's stall at the market, where she always bought fresh peppers. Today, the woman turned her face away. At the palm wine joint, Papa Jide stopped mid-joke when she walked by. His friends refused to meet her gaze. Neoma tried to greet the barber near the borehole. He spat in the dust and walked inside without a word. Only one voice reached her that day. "Neoma." She turned. It was Ifini, the boy who helped her father on the farm years ago. He looked thinner now, older. His shirt was torn at the collar. "You need to be careful," he whispered, eyes darting left and right. "They think you're opening doors meant to stay shut." "What doors?" she asked. He hesitated. "My mother told me once, the town is built on forgotten stories. If you start remembering too many, the ground won't hold still." Before she could speak again, he was gone. That night, Neoma went back to Adiz's compound. She didn't knock. Adiz was already sitting on the veranda, the red book on her lap, unopened. Her face was unreadable. "They're starting to turn," Neoma said. Adiz nodded. "You've cracked the mask. The town sees itself now, and it does not like the reflection. They're afraid of you. They're afraid of truth." Neoma sat beside her. "What do I do?" Adiz opened the book. It turned to a blank page. Slowly, letters formed. "The truth that burns the tongue must first taste the heart." Neoma frowned. "Is that a warning?" Adiz shrugged. "Maybe it's a choice." They sat in silence again, the kind that grows between women who carry more than their share. Then, a sound. Footsteps. Many. Neoma looked up. Shadows gathered at the edge of the compound. Torches flickered in the dark. Figures stood without speaking, as though held together by purpose alone. Adiz didn't move. She closed the book and stood. "I told you," she said, not to Neoma but to the night. "A town that hides from truth will always come with fire." Neoma stood too. Her hands trembled, but she didn't run. Adiz handed her the red book. "Tonight, you decide if this story continues." And with that, the woman stepped forward, into the torchlight. Neoma stood alone in the doorway, red book in hand. The whispers started again. But this time, they had her name in them. They did not come with machetes. Not yet. But the crowd that gathered outside Adiz's compound brought something older, fear cloaked in tradition, anger sharpened by silence, and the false courage that grows in numbers. Torchlight wavered in the humid night air. Neoma could see their faces now, half lit, half shadow. Men from the council. Women from the church. Even Chica, who had braided her hair as a child. All standing together as though proximity could absolve them. Adiz stepped forward slowly, her bare feet brushing the dust. She wore white, a plain wrapper and blouse, but under the torchlight, she seemed otherworldly. Not like a spirit, no. Like something older than a spirit. Like memory. "Neoma," someone shouted from the crowd. "You are young. You don't know this woman. She is poison. She stirs what we buried," another called. "She is a witch." A murmur rippled through the gathering. Witch. In Umuaka, the word didn't mean magic, it meant exile. It meant a life unlived. It meant being spoken of in past tense while still breathing. Adiz turned to Neoma and spoke loud enough for all to hear. "They do not hate the truth. They fear what it makes them remember." Neoma's fingers tightened around the red book. "She has bewitched the girl," someone hissed. "Let her speak," said another voice, clearer, unfamiliar. The crowd parted, reluctantly. It was the priest. Young. New. Not yet bent by Umuaka's unspoken rules. Neoma stepped forward, book in hand. Her voice shook, but it held. "This town, our town, has lived on silence. My mother was sent away. My uncle died without a name. Adiz is not the first to carry truth, only the first to carry it openly." She opened the red book. Pages fluttered like wings, stopping on a fresh page. The ink appeared, slow and deliberate, as if the book knew it had an audience. "In Umuaka, the dead are not buried. They are silenced." Gasps. A man dropped his torch. Neoma looked up. Who here has not buried something they were told to forget? A sister's shame? A father's deal? A priest's secret? The crowd swelled with unrest. "She is insulting us. She is telling the truth." That last voice, Mama Chinier. All eyes turned. The pepper seller stepped forward, her wrapper tied tightly, jaw clenched. "I knew her mother," she said. "She was not mad. She was silenced." Adiz nodded once. Truth multiplies when spoken aloud. More voices followed. Quiet ones. Hesitant ones. Each speaking a truth too long held. A stolen land. A false accusation. A debt unpaid. A birth denied. Umuaka began to tremble not from an earthquake, but from the weight of everything rising at once. The fire did not come that night. Instead, the people began to speak. Adiz turned to Neoma and smiled, not kindly, not sadly, but like someone who has seen a storm hold back. "You've started the telling," she said. "What now?" Adiz looked up at the stars. Now, the town must listen or turn to ash. Umuaka did not sleep that night. The air was heavy with voices, whispers, confessions, old names spoken for the first time in years. People gathered in small groups under mango trees and verandas, recounting what they had heard outside Adiz's compound. Some believed. Others resisted. But all were stirred. Inside the compound, Adiz sat alone. Neoma entered quietly, the red book clutched to her chest. It felt warm now, as if it carried a heartbeat of its own. She approached the mat where Adiz rested and placed the book beside her. "It won't stop writing," Neoma said. "Even when it's closed. It's like it's remembering everything that's being said." Adiz gave a faint smile. "That is what truth does. It waits. It listens. Why me? Neoma asked. Adi's eyes found hers in the dim light. Because you didn't run. Silence stretched between them. The crickets outside carried on their music. Then Adi spoke again, voice low. My time is ending. Neoma's heart caught. What do you mean? I came to finish what your mother could not. To open the mouths of the dead. But the book has chosen a new scribe. Neoma shook her head. No. I'm not ready. No one ever is. But readiness is not the same as willingness. She reached for the book, fingers grazing the cover. The book will protect itself. But it will cost you. What cost? Adiz gave her a look that was not cruel, but ancient. You will never be able to forget. A pause. You will see the lies even when others don't. You will carry truths that don't belong to you. You will be the girl who knows too much. The wind outside picked up, rustling the leaves of the breadfruit tree. Somewhere, a baby cried. Somewhere else, a dog barked and fell silent. Adiz stood slowly, her frame smaller than Neoma had ever noticed. I will walk to the river now, she said. Alone. Neoma wanted to stop her. But she couldn't move. The weight of the red book held her still. She watched Adiz leave, white wrapper flowing like mist behind her. That night, the people of Umuaka claimed they saw a woman walking into the Nyaba River at dawn. No splash. No sound. Just a ripple that did not end. And when they returned to her compound, she was gone. Only the book remained. The sun rose slowly over Umuaka, as if unsure it was welcome after a night like that. Neoma sat on the veranda, the red book in her lap. It no longer felt like paper and leather, it felt like breath. Like memory. Like a river that could drown and cleanse in the same stroke. People came. First, a widow from Umuohiagu who had heard of the book and wanted to speak her pain aloud. Then, a farmer who confessed that the land he tilled was stolen in silence during the war. Then, a boy who said his uncle visited him at night when the house was too quiet. Neoma listened. She didn't write. The book did. It opened itself as each voice poured out its burden. Ink bled from unseen hands. Words appeared like ghosts. The book was alive with sorrow, courage, shame, and light. But not everyone came to speak. Some came to silence. Abiz, the town secretary, arrived just before dusk. He wore his white kaftan-like armor and spoke in the language of power, measured, polite, and sharp. Young lady, he began, we appreciate your efforts. But I must remind you that this town has laws. We have courts. We have elders. Neoma said nothing. The people are becoming restless. You have stirred things that are better left. Buried, she asked. Abiz's eyes narrowed. Balanced. Behind him, a few men nodded. Committee members. Guardians of peace, they called themselves. But Neoma knew what they were guarding. Your name is in the book, she said quietly. The silence that followed cracked like thunder. Abiz stepped forward. You dare. I don't write it, she said. It writes what it hears. A bead of sweat slid down his cheek. I have done nothing wrong. The book opened. A name. His name. A year. 1997. A girl. Adeobi. She was 15. The committee members read in silence. One of them, a quiet, aging man named Izugo, removed his cap and stared at the earth. Abiz lunged for the book. The moment his fingers touched the cover, he screamed. He stumbled back, clutching his hand. Steam rose from his palm. Burned, not by fire but by something older. Neoma stood. This is not a court, she said. And I am not a judge. I'm only a mirror. If you hate the reflection, stop blaming the glass. She turned to the others. You don't have to believe the book. But you will no longer silence it. The men left in silence. Even Abiz. That night, Neoma walked to the center of Umuaka and placed the red book on a stool beneath the old Iroko tree. She lit a small lantern beside it. If you have a truth, she said aloud, come speak it. The book waited. And by midnight, a line had already formed. By morning, the line had grown longer. Women with tired eyes. Men with trembling hands. Young ones with questions. Old ones with ghosts. They all came to the stool beneath the Iroko tree, where the red book waited like a patient elder. The air in Umuaka had shifted. Not with panic, but with something harder, acceptance. Or maybe the early tremors of it. Neoma sat beside the book, but she no longer needed to speak. People came, touched the cover, and spoke aloud. And the book listened. Chinya, the tailor's wife, confessed that she had stolen her sister's bride price to save her sick child. A boy named Ikena admitted he had lied about a neighbor's goats and started a quarrel that cost a man his reputation. An elder wept as he spoke the name of a boy he'd fathered during his travels, a son raised as a stranger. No one was arrested. No one was stoned. Some truths, once spoken, turned to dust. Some stayed and needed mending. The elders tried to resist it. Chief Ibube declared a public fast and called the book a vessel of confusion. But even he came one night, cloaked and quiet, and left weeping without a word. Umuaka was learning how to listen. The town square became something new. Children stopped to read the open pages. Neighbors left bowls of food beside the stool, as though feeding an ancestor. Some nights, songs were sung. Not mourning songs, but songs of return, of home, of things finally being named. And Neoma? She grew silent. She had become more than a girl now. More than a witness. She was a threshold. People no longer asked where she had come from. They asked where she was going. And always, she would look toward the horizon and say, "I'm waiting." For what? They asked. For the first person who will speak before they are forced. That evening, a child approached the book. She couldn't have been older than 8. Barefoot, with a missing front tooth and bright eyes. She didn't wait in line. She placed a hand on the book and whispered, "I broke Mama's mirror. I told her the wind did it." The book glowed faintly. The child turned to Neoma. "Does that count?" Neoma smiled for the first time in days. "It's a start." And it was. Because truth was no longer a storm in Umuaka. It was rain. Sometimes heavy, sometimes soft. But always, always watering something deep. As days passed, something strange began to happen in Umuaka. The Red Book still held secrets, but sometimes those secrets didn't fit together. People started to wonder if all truths were the same. Neighbors who once fought over lies now argued over which truth was real. "No, that's not what happened," one would say. "You forgot this part," another would shout. Even families split into sides, each holding their own version of events. Neoma watched quietly, feeling the weight of it all. The book had shown the town their secrets, but now it seemed to show the town their doubts. One afternoon, Adi's old red book sat open beneath the Iroko tree, its pages flipping slowly as if by the wind's breath. Neoma noticed new entries appearing by themselves, some stories changing, others vanishing, and new ones coming in that didn't make sense. The townspeople began to ask, if secrets can change, if stories can twist, then what is truth? At the market, elders debated. Some said, truth is what the gods say. Others claimed, truth is what we remember. And children whispered, truth is what feels right. One evening, Neoma met with Barber Hugo again. The old herbalist's eyes were tired but wise. Truth is not a single thing, he said softly. It is many things, a web of words and memories. The book shows what is hidden, but it cannot hold the whole story. You must teach the people this. Neoma nodded slowly, understanding the new challenge ahead. That night, she called a meeting under the big tree. The townsfolk gathered, some weary, others curious. "Umuaka," she began, "we have seen many secrets. We have learned that truth can hurt and heal. But now we must learn that truth can be different for each person. It is not just what we say, but what we feel and believe." Murmurs spread through the crowd. We must listen with patience. We must forgive mistakes. We must hold our stories gently like flowers, not stones. A silence followed. Then a small voice from the back spoke. "So, truth is not always a battle?" "No," Neoma smiled. "It is a path we walk together." That night, the red book closed itself gently, as if agreeing. Umuaka had learned a new lesson, that truth, like the river, changes course, but it still flows forward. The next morning, the town of Umuaka felt different. The heavy silence of secrets was lighter now, like a breath after a long wait. Adiz no longer sat in the kiosk telling everyone stories. Instead, she was quiet, watching the town with soft eyes. Her red book lay closed beside her, its magic still there but calmer. Neoma sat next to her, holding the book gently. "I've learned a lot," Neoma said. "Not just about others, but about myself." Adiz smiled. "The book shows what's inside us all, good and bad. But it is not meant to hurt. It's meant to help." Slowly, the people of Umuaka began to change. They spoke kindly, listened more, and forgave the faults they once shouted about. The fights lessened. Laughter returned, softer but real. Neoma became the town's guide for truth, using the red book only when needed, helping neighbors understand each other better. One evening, as the sun set behind the hills, Adiz stood and closed the book one last time. "It's time for me to go," she said. "But remember, the real power is in your hearts, in how you choose to speak and listen." The town watched as she walked away, her red dress catching the last light, her steps steady and sure. No one saw where she went, but her story stayed. And Umuaka learned a final truth. Words can build bridges or walls. The choice is ours.